Hello Year 11, welcome to this history blog. This little video blog is designed to give you a little bit of extra help on your home learning this week. You have to answer questions 3B, 3C and 3D. I've also emailed you a copy of this PowerPoint and of the homework, so this should really help you with your homework this week. So best of luck, good luck. So this slide gives you an overview of the Germany questions. As you can see, the Germany exam has 6 different questions on it, but we're only focusing on questions 3B, 3C and 3D for this homework. So this homework's all about the Munich Beer Hall Putsch, and this is a really important event in the history and rise of the Nazi Party. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the Munich Beer Hall Putsch. It happened in November 1923, and it was Hitler's attempt to violently take control of Germany by force in a so-called Putsch, which is the German word for an uprising. Now, historians are quite divided on whether the Beer Hall Putsch was in fact a success or a failure. Some historians would regard it as a failure because quite clearly it did not achieve its objectives. Hitler was arrested, put on trial, he got sent to prison at Landsberg Fortress for 5 years. So in many respects, the Munich Beer Hall Putsch was a complete failure and showed how the Weimar Republic was able to survive. However, some historians might regard the Munich Beer Hall Putsch as a success because Adolf Hitler was able to turn his trial into a huge propaganda event. He got national press attention and he became quite a famous figure throughout Germany. So it enabled him to create a platform from which to launch the Nazi Party in the late 1920s and, of course, get into power in the 1930s. So some historians say it's a success, some would say it was a failure. So let's have a look at these past questions focus. Now, questions 3B, 3C and 3D focus on looking at 2 historical interpretations, which you can see there in front of you. Now, when you do this homework, the first thing that's really important to do is to read those 2 interpretations really, really carefully. What I would do, and I do this in the exam as well, is underline key points, key quotes, key phrases, and annotate at the side. So really think about what does the source or the interpretation say about the Munich Beer Hall Putsch. So in this case, interpretation 1 very much focuses on the idea that the Putsch was a failure. Interpretation 2, however, suggests it was a success for the reasons that Hitler was able to use his trial to get maximum publicity and attention for his cause throughout Germany. So let's have a look at how you do the questions. Question 3B is worth 4 marks. You would only need to spend about 6 minutes on this in the exam. What you have to do for this question is identify how the 2 interpretations are different. So there's some useful phrases for you to look at there. Essentially, interpretation 1 does suggest that Munich Beer Hall Putsch was a failure. You then need to identify a quote from the interpretation which suggests that. And then the key here really is to use a connective. On the other hand, is an absolutely cracking connective. You can use that connective to then compare interpretation 1 with interpretation 2, which of course suggests the Munich Beer Hall Putsch was more of a success, and then you're going to have a nice quote from the source just to back that up. Now remember, quotes should be like baby crocodile, short and snappy. Don't make those quotes too long. And make sure the answer itself isn't too long. It's only worth 4 marks, 6 minutes, so you don't need to write too much for this question. So good luck with question 3B. Now, question 3C focuses on why the 2 interpretations are different, and you can pause this video to look at some of the advice there. But essentially, I think the reason why these 2 interpretations might be different is they have a slightly different focus. Interpretation 1 emphasises the actual putsch itself and the fact it failed, whereas interpretation 2's focus is a little bit wider. It looks at about what happened after the putsch, looks about how the putsch gave Hitler the opportunity to go on trial and therefore use that as a way to get attention for what the Nazi Party stood for, and he was able to openly criticise the Weimar Republic at his trial. So that's why these 2 sources, interpretations are different, is because they have a slightly different focus and emphasis on which part of the Munich Beer Hall Putsch they are actually looking at. And then finally, question 3D says, how far do you agree with the interpretation 1 about how successful the Munich Beer Hall Putsch was? Really, when you do this question, it's worth 16 marks and it's 4 marks for SPAG, so you're probably going to spend about half an hour on this question. Your first paragraph should be an introduction, and within that introduction you need to make it really clear what the opinion in interpretation 1 is. So in this case it says that the Beer Hall Putsch wasn't at all successful, it was in fact a failure. Your second paragraph should then use knowledge to agree with interpretation 1. You should probably find about 3 pieces of evidence which actually backs up interpretation 1 and says, yep, it was not successful, it was a failure. Your third paragraph should then disagree with interpretation 1. So almost certainly you're going to be using the evidence of interpretation 2 as well as your own knowledge to do that. And you're going to make out an argument that in fact the Munich beer hall putsch was actually fairly successful. And then your final paragraph is your overall conclusion where you give your opinion backed up with evidence. There's some own knowledge here which you can use actually in your exam answer, so you can pause it and have a read of some of that, and you've got a copy of that in your books, I think. And then here are some useful phrases that you can use in your exam questions, some features of academic writing, and again pause this so that you can have a look at some of those key phrases. If you have a look there, it goes through the 4 different paragraphs that you'll be writing about. And so finally, there's a little bit of guidance here about what you need to do in each of the paragraphs, some more analytical phrases that you can do. So maybe use that as a step-by-step guide to help you to be successful. It's really important that you get enough written down for question 3D. You're probably looking at writing a couple of pages in your exercise book for this. This is a big question, really important that you do well. So thanks very much for listening to this video blog. Hopefully it's been useful for your homework. Hashtag loving the learning. Hope to see some fantastic homeworks this week. Thank you for your commitment. Over and out.